Good afternoon. Thank you again to the IAMC for the opportunity to speak today. It is my incredible honor to be here among my esteemed, notably women panelists. India has a rich history of religious pluralism and tolerance, including among many Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, and others. However, today, my presentation focuses on how Islamophobia is deployed by extremist groups in India. Although my organization, Islamic Networks Group, presents on the transnational scope of Islamophobia among Western nations, we also know that Islamophobia is being deployed in non-white nations, including India. So what is Islamophobia? Islamophobia is defined as anti-Muslim racism and involves viewing and portraying Muslims as being monolithic and static, separate and other, inferior to the West and what it stands for, as barbaric, irrational, primitive, and sexist, as people who are engaged in a clash of civilizations, as violent, aggressive people who support terrorism. And Islam is now viewed as a political ideology cloaked as a religion, which is very problematic when you consider religious liberties. So what are the roots of Islamophobia? We find the images and stereotypes of Muslims as infidels and as warring people promoted as early as the Crusades from the 11th to the 13th centuries. This view was reinforced from the 15th to the 20th centuries when European countries colonized most parts of the world. The colonizers asserted their power over colonized people by defining themselves as smarter, more capable, more human, and describing occupied peoples as backwards and in need of civilizing. They also cast occupied peoples as enemies of Christianity and Western civilization. In Western societies, these disparaging views of Muslims have persisted, and Islamophobia has become integrated in various institutional settings like education, media, video games, and even Hollywood, leading to systemic racism and discrimination. And of course, these influences lead to the adoption of stereotypes that can influence one's subconscious and even override one's values as demonstrated by various studies. That means that even if you don't believe that you're biased or racist, your subconscious makes you behave in biased and racist ways. Despite the fact that Islamophobia came out of white and Christian supremacy, it is now the tool of oppression outside of the West, often used to justify dispossession of Muslims in the pursuit of power, land, and resources in places like Myanmar, China, and India. Turning our attention to India specifically, Islamophobia is used as a foil for Hindu supremacy. In order to establish ethnic and religious supremacy, Muslims and other religious minorities are used as a foil to justify Hindu supremacy and Hindu nationalist ideals. An example is the love jihad narrative. There is a perception among some Hindu nationalists that Muslims seek to marry Hindus in order to convert them to Islam. Thus, interreligious Hindu-Muslim marriages are discouraged, discredited, and even criminalized in order to maintain the purity of the Hindu nation. Laws that prohibit or limit religious conversion have been passed in 10 of India's 28 states to protect the dominant religion from the perceived threats of Islam and Christianity. Hindu converts to Islam and their Muslim spouses can be jailed from 5 to 10 years in some states. Beginning in March 2020, some Hindutva supporters began spreading false rumors on social media that Muslims were waging a corona jihad. by intentionally infecting Hindus. Indian Muslims have often been seen as foreigners and a threat by Hindu nationalists to the purity of the Hindu Rashtra or nation, despite the fact that the vast majority of Muslims in India are indigenous Indians. As mentioned before, this trope is reflected in the 2019 Citizenship Amendment Act and the National Register of Citizens, which only discriminates against Muslim refugees. Other forms of legislation have been passed to curtail the rights of Muslims and impose Hindu cultural norms. Other Islamophobic tropes are often used by Hindutva supporters to scapegoat Muslims for their own political gain, including that Muslims are terrorists. A prominent Hindu nationalist supported former U.S. President Trump's Muslim ban and stated that similar action is needed to contain terror activities in this country. Especially after 9/11, Muslims in India, as well as Pakistan, Kashmir, and Myanmar, are frequently linked to terrorism. Another Hindu nationalist was quoted as saying, "Why should we tolerate Rohingya refugees when they pose a security threat to the nation?" Finally, I want to end on a hopeful note to remind us that all of this can be reversed when we consider India's history of not only conflict, but also cooperation and coexistence. We at ING maintain that education and engagement are the best tools at our disposal. We must learn to respect and celebrate our differences if we are to coexist and thrive as communities and nations. Thank you so much.